Football Happy Hour continuing here on CBS Sports HQ as we start to take a look ahead to Week 8 and some of the early lines. Ravens 1-point favorites on the road versus the Buccaneers. That line will probably move a little bit as we get into the week. Dolphins set to make a trip to Detroit to take on the Lions. They are 3-point road favorites there. Rams 2-point home favorites versus the 49ers. Niners already beat them once this year. Rams, though, at home get the points, as do the Seahawks, plus 2.5 as the 6-1 Giants come calling. That should be a good game. And then you have one of the big games. At least early in the season, it looked like it would be a big game. Now, not so sure. Packers at the Bills, and look at that spread. 10.5 points favoring the Bills. Football Happy Hour, Jeremy St. Louis alongside Brady, Quinn, and Danny Kanell. Let's get some insight onto early Week 8 lines, which kicks off, of course, Thursday night. Ravens at the Buccaneers. Based on what we've seen the past 2 weeks from Tampa, would you say that this is a must-win game for the Bucs, Danny?
Yes, but I think last week at Carolina as an almost 2-touchdown favorite was a must-win too. And I don't know if the confidence is there to say they can beat a team that's as dynamic and present some problems. Now, it is a defense that you should be able to get right against, but they were supposed to do that against Carolina. So early lean would be Ravens.
This line looks a little funny to me. I mean, in part because I think the Ravens have been a better football team this season. Mm-hmm. Their pass rush is coming on. I mean, Odafe Owe, Justin Houston, all those pieces. I mean, you saw that last week versus Cleveland. At times, Brissett had nowhere to go and couldn't get rid of the football fast enough. So that's going to be a problem for a Tampa Bay Bucs offensive line that struggled to protect Tom Brady. So this was one that I would not touch right now. I'd kind of wait to see where this line moves to at this point in time because the Ravens' defense has been improved. It's going to present some big issues for an offense that's mightily struggled. But I want to answer your original question. And you asked, is this a must-win? No, it's not a must-win. They play in the NFC South right now.
That's right.
Regardless of the losing record, they're still, atop of the NFC South? Yep. So, of course it's not a must-win. I mean, at this point, it's can they get it together enough to make you think that they'll have a shot? I mean, we could see what we saw from the NFC West where you had Seattle as a 7-9 team win their division and go on to the playoffs. That could be what happens in the NFC South, at least the way it's trending right now.
And all Tom Brady wants is an opportunity to play in the postseason. Because then once again, you swipe out the records, you start fresh, and it's anybody's game.
That's right.
But they need to play better, certainly, if they even want to think about beating somebody on the road in the playoffs.
Given what you said then about the fact that maybe it's not a must-win game, if they lose this game, how hot is the seat for Todd Bowles?
I don't know that the seat's overly hot for Todd Bowles, honestly, in my opinion. I mean, he's a defensive-minded coach. Their defense has been outstanding. It's been their offensive issues. So if anything, the finger's going to kind of point either at Byron Leftwich or Tom Brady. And again, going back to what we talked about earlier, the lack of Bruce Arians being a part of this, at least game day on the sidelines, maybe in some of the preparations to putting this all together. So, look, there's a lot of other head coaches in the NFL right now that I think their seat's getting hot. I don't think Todd Bowles in year one with this group is one of them.
All right, well, the Dolphins got Tua back, and he finished the game versus the Steelers on Sunday night, so that's good. In Week 8, they get a trip to Detroit to face the Lions. The Lions started the season strong, but this offense has gone off the rails with injuries, and this defense, you alluded to it, not a good defense. Dolphins only 3-point favorites, but this could be a good game for this team in a get-right spot, Brady.
Yeah, you can call it a get-right spot if you want. I mean, I'm
for Tua, I'm saying, as he continues to come back.
Right, I mean, he looked great at the beginning of the game. Things kind of fizzled a little bit there in the second half, but this is a secondary that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Trent Sherfield, whoever else want to throw in the conversation, with that speed, I mean, they should be able to take advantage of a secondary and a defense that's given up a ton of big plays and points this year. So this really sets up for one where the Dolphins shouldn't have any issue in Detroit. My only hesitation is Aiden Hutchinson had his best game of the season this past week. He looked phenomenal, getting pressures, getting sacks. That offensive line for Miami has struggled at times. So if they can't protect Tua, maybe you're talking about a different story, but this is one where I like the matchup for the Dolphins here.
I don't know about you guys, but when I watch the Dolphins, I'm like, I don't want to watch because I don't want to see Tua get hurt and have to go out of a game again. I'm sure Mike McDaniel feels that. They would love nothing more than to go to Detroit, have a game in control, and get him out, and let Bridgewater go in there, let him hand off, and just get out of town. Dan Campbell seems exasperated. I mean, they were so close, and they were getting in these shootout games, but they couldn't close it. It almost feels like it's another lost season for this franchise. I still believe the players will fight for them, but I think the Dolphins have too much firepower. And Jeremy, I'm with you. I do think it's a game because Tua had 3 balls in the second half that could have been intercepted. He's got to clean up some of those, but it's expected. He wasn't able to practice with a team for a week. He's been sidelined. Timing comes back, especially when you're talking about guys as fast and how many weapons as he has. Yeah. It is rhythm-based. You got to get in the flow of the game, so that'll be another game for him to get tuned up.
You talked about coaches on the hot seat. I mean, I would hate to see it if it was Dan Campbell, but you have to think at some point in time, they're going to be looking at this and saying, are we making any progress in Detroit? And whoever you want to put the finger at, but we know how that goes. It's the head coach and quarterback, and that's usually how this works.
Well, and so many, people who watch Hard Knocks bought into Dan Campbell. Viewers bought into him. Like, what a great coach this guy has. And, you want to see, you have that feel-good thing. You want them to get over the hump. Those first three games of the season, those first 3 losses of the season, I mean, you're only talking about a possession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the tough thing is the offense had been playing well. It's started to simmer down.
Patriots.
They've been simmering down since. And then you're going to see the defense isn't really improving. And so you don't really have much to point to at this point. But they are a young team. I mean, we do have to acknowledge that. They had some guys out, so injuries played a role in all of it. But at this point in time of the season, everyone's making that claim.
Yeah.
I mean, you could list a number of teams that have suffered a bunch of injuries that's going to play an impact on their win-losses, and you got to be able to overcome that.
And certainly for the Lions, they need to stop the turnover. 7 turnovers in the past few weeks. So things need to turn around there, and it's going to be tough against this Dolphins team. For the 49ers and others, they were expecting to see this offense kind of take off Sunday against the Chiefs with the new addition of Christian McCaffrey. Instead, it was Patrick and the Mahomes that managed to get the job done, certainly in the second half at Levi Stadium. Niners head to the Rams this week, 2-point underdogs. How much more McCaffrey are you expecting to see here with a week of practice under his belt?
A lot more. I mean, for me, I think he's a great fit for the system. I think he's another weapon you can utilize with Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and all the different things you can do if you're Kyle Shanahan, he's had success versus Sean McVay, bottom line. So I like the way this group matches up, at least offensively, against the Rams. The biggest question to me is what does the defense look like? I mean, they just got carved up by the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I know the Rams haven't been that same offense, but they do have that capability. You still have some guys there in Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford, and all their other weapons that have the potential to. I just can't see this as being the game that gets it right. I think that front for the 49ers gets after Matt Stafford and that O-line that's been hot and cold this year.
I'm with you. And to answer your question, Jeremy, I was pretty surprised that we saw Christian McCaffrey as much as we did on such a short window. I mean, I could only imagine on his wristband or whatever how many plays he had. Does he know the new terminology? There had to be some carryover, but with another week of practice, they'll have a healthy package for him where you could start wrinkling him in and actually be a real threat as opposed to some really simple runs that defenses are going to be able to shut down.
He's a Stanford guy.
Yeah.
So he should be able to pick this up rather quickly.
Should be able to pick it up quickly, yeah. 2-point underdogs are the 49ers as they go to the Rams. Niners won the first meeting, as mentioned, 24-9. They have won 7 straight regular season games going back to 2019 versus the Rams. To your point, Danny, they have owned Sean McVay up to this point. The 6-1 New York Giants take on the 4-3 Seattle Seahawks. These 2 teams among 3 teams that have won 4 or more games as an underdog this season. 2 teams with quarterbacks that are on redemption tours, through the first 7 weeks of the season. How surprising is it to see these 2 teams sitting where they are, Danny?
It's a shock. It really is. And you know what? We've talked so much about, and there is an East Coast bias in this country, right? Like New York teams, the Jets and Giants have been covered a lot. What Geno Smith has done with the Seahawks, he deserves a ton of credit, especially when you juxtapose that with what's happening with Russell Wilson. They are in a much better position offensively than the other team. But I'll tell you, I love this Giants story, not just because it's my former franchise. Daniel Jones is putting the Giants in a bind because they're going to have to make a decision on him. He is playing so much better, and he's eliminating the mistakes. You don't think it's going to be a tough decision for him?
Brady's got a wry smile on his face. You can't
now
see
he's
it on
rushing for over 100 yards, and he's helping them make plays to win games. Don't get it wrong. This is about Saquon Barkley's return and Brian Daboll, the coaching job he's done. But I think it's going to be a tough decision for the Giants to make. What do you do with a guy that potentially gets him to the playoffs for the first time in a while?
5 game-winning drives.
Yeah, no, it's been good. He hasn't turned over the football, but he hasn't really been put in a position where he's had to carry this team. It's been all Saquon Barkley. In fact, Saquon Barkley touches 56% of the time. It's him. It's either catching the football, running the football when you exclude the quarterback. So the question is, if you shut down Saquon Barkley, will Daniel Jones be able to operate with a wide receiver group that Wan'Dale Robinson may not play in this game? He got banged up last week. We already know Kenny Galladay, Kadarius Toney, the issues with that. Sterling Shepard's hurt, so you start
just run for 100 again.
Basically, Darius Slayton and then him, yeah.
I think Pete Carroll and his group defensively is good enough to be able to stop that. And then on the flip side, talk about Geno Smith. What about Kenneth Walker?
Yeah,
he might be up for offensive rookie of the year. He's been phenomenal. Tariq Woolen at cornerback might be up for defensive rookie of the year. They've had some draft picks that have hit and are immediate impact players so far. That being said, 2.5 points. The way Brian Daboll and the Giants have played this year, you cannot bet against them. You got to keep playing that hot hand until that thing goes cold. So, I never thought I'd see Seattle at this point in time of the season atop the NFC West. And by the way, there's still, if you like them, if you like what you've seen, a little juice there and going and betting on them to win the NFC West division. But I just, it's hard for me to bet against the Giants. They just seem to keep finding a way at the end of games.
20-1 were the Seahawks to win the NFC West to start the season. The Giants 50-1 to win the NFC East, and there they are sitting up there, 6-1. Lastly, Aaron Rodgers, a double-digit underdog for the first time in his career as the Pack go to the Bills. I mean, that's an incredible stat, by the way. If you take a look, we've got a full screen here. Rodgers has played 234 games in his career. At worst, he's been a 7.5-point underdog regular season games. This week, he goes to Buffalo, 10.5-point dog, and he's never won when more than a 7-point dog. And if Josh Allen beats him, here's the other storyline. That'll be 3 former league MVPs beaten in a 4-game span. Last player to do that, Troy Aikman in '96.
Leave this graphic up.
3-1
at Seattle, right? At San Francisco, at LA, at Arizona. What's the common denominator? All on the road. You look at the road home split for Aaron Rodgers' career win-loss record. If we want to start talking about win-losses, clearly, and you'd say that for any quarterback, but even more so. It's such a drastic or stark, comparison between his home stats versus his road stats as a quarterback and how he plays. This is one of the toughest places to play the way the Bills are shaped up right now. They can cover, they can rush, and you got to have a hard time keeping pace with them. So to me, you look at those 10.5 points, it's a huge number, but I don't know, man. I might be sitting there. I mean, and this number probably will get bet down a little bit, so my advice would be to wait. But this is a big-time mismatch, the way the Packers' offense looks and the way that the Bills are operating at this point in time.
I added it up, 3-1 against the spread. They might all have been losses, but he only didn't cover one of those. Aaron Rodgers with 10.5 points. Give me all those points.
You take all
I'll
those
take
points?
them. I don't buy into what he's saying, where what happened this past weekend was a good thing and everybody's sleeping on him, but I still think it's Aaron Rodgers. He'll find a way.
But Alan Lazard,
cover.
That's
a win.
He's 10 points. They might
because that's what he's thinking in his head. He's like, I just got to keep this one close so Kanell wins this back.
That's right.
And you just wonder, I mean, there's obviously no argument to be made at this point for Josh Allen not to be the MVP. And certainly if he gets through Rodgers here, we talked about it, hasn't happened since '96. Troy Aikman did it. And you have to like Allen in this spot. If you're looking at player props for Allen, certainly one to take a look of, including the playoffs. 8.5-point underdog once in the conference championship versus Seattle was Aaron Rodgers in 2014. They lost that game by 6 points. Brady Quinn, Danny Kanell joining me here for the Football Happy Hours. We discuss storylines getting ready for Week 8. And for more on these storylines and others, be sure you're listening to the Pick 6 podcast. Will Brinson, Ryan Wilson, John Breach giving you their insight and opinion and having plenty of fun while doing it. You can download and follow the Pick 6 pod wherever you get your podcast audio.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.